going to show you how to install VirtualBox and get an ISO file up and running. So the first thing you want to do is go to the VirtualBox website, and I'm using the version of VirtualBox that is 5.14, and so we're just going to go to that website and get that. Okay, so we're on the VirtualBox website, virtualbox.org. I don't download it from anywhere else. I go directly to their website, and I've got the wikis downloads here, but you can check out the about. You want to check out the documentation, and you can download the PDF files for the user manual, and you can Google all kinds of help. But I'm going to go to the downloads version here, and depending upon which operating system, your main operating system you're running, you can do for Windows host. That's Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10, and I'm running mine on a Windows 10 machine, OS X, Linux, or Solaris, and just select the x86 AMD 64. And depending upon which one you want to get there, you're just going to put that in your downloads file, and you're going to put that in and install that. And once you install that, I just do the regular options on mine. And once I get that installed, I come back out here to VirtualBox, and you get it installed, and you're going to come up. You're not going to have any operating systems. You're not going to have any VBs installed. So what I'm going to do is walk you through how to install one. You're also going to need your ISO file. You're going to need to go to whatever website to get your ISO file, whether it's Linux or Linux Mint or something along those lines. But you're going to need to download it, and you're going to need to know your version, whether it's a 32-bit or 64-bit, because that's going to matter when you go to create your machine. So we're just going to go ahead and create a new machine here, and depending upon which type you've got, I'm not going to worry about a name yet. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say let's do Linux and Ubuntu. If I'm going to do Linux Mint, I'm just going to pick the Ubuntu 64, whether you're doing Gentoo or Arch or whatever version. If you're doing, like I said, Linux Mint, you just use the Ubuntu 64-bit. But let's say I'm doing Ubuntu 64-bit, I would select that one. For this case, though, I'm going to do Windows. I'm going to show you Windows Server 2012, and I'm just going to select which Windows version I have. And it goes back all the way to 3.195, and you can see I've got Windows XP installed here. But I'm going to do Server 2012 64-bit. And then I'm going to set my memory size. If you have the guided mode on, it may show you something like this. So your guided mode will walk you through, and you'll do step by step. And then I'm going to have to name it. I do the expert mode. So that's just the difference there. That's guided mode. That's expert mode. And I'm just going to call this one MS Windows 2012 Backup. And that's going to create a folder. Call that folder name on my computer. And I'm going to give it my memory size. You can't go over half of your memory for your computer. So if you've got 8 gig of memory, you're only going to be able to give it 4 gig of memory. So RAM does matter with the VirtualBox, and I've got 32 gig on mine, so I'm going to go and give it 16 gig of RAM. And on this one, it will only let me go up to 24 gig. So it's going to reserve for my Windows 10. It's going to reserve enough RAM for it to operate. It's not half, excuse me. It's how much your main operating system needs at a minimum to operate. So Windows Server 2012 doesn't need 24 to run. I'm going to give it 16. But don't run a bunch of virtual boxes that are running all of your memory. So if you run in 3 Windows Server 12 machines, and they're all running 16 gig of RAM, it's going to use up all of your RAM. So you just want to keep that into consideration, but you don't want to give it too little. You've got to give it the minimum for your operating system. You can't go 4 meg because your operating system won't install. You got to give it the minimum that your operating system needs, and that's where you'll check your operating system out and check to see how much is your minimum required. On our hard disk, you cannot create a virtual hard drive, but you do need a VDI or you need a virtual hard drive to boot to. I'm going to go ahead and tell it to create, but you can point to an old one, like this is my current one, my Windows Server, and you can see all the ones I've currently got created. But I don't want to do that. You would only do that if you've deleted an old one and saved your VDI file or your virtual hard drive. But I'm going to create here, and I'm going to go ahead and click it on create, and it's going to take me to the next screen, which is the create your disk, your virtual disk drive. And you can have some different selections here. I'm not going to lecture on here or walk through on what each one of these are. You can check out the VirtualBox website help to see what each one of these do on here. whether it's parallels or copy on write, all those different ones. I always go with VDI. I'm going to leave my file name location. This is where sometimes I put my VDI file in a different location, because if I click this, this is going to go into my VirtualBox. You can see I've got different folders here for different machines. 3.1, my Windows 7 mains, or Windows XP, but I've got my VDI files in here. Now normally it creates the VDI files inside each folder, but if you delete that folder, you lose your VDI. So sometimes I save my VDI file and create a whole new machine and let that machine go to a folder, but I leave my VDI in that folder. That's the logic that I use. But if you just want to put it into the folder, and that's the Windows 12 backup folder, that's where that's going to go there, and that's the default anyway. And on your file size, you have to set this. Once you set this, it's not impossible, but it's next to impossible to change that size, because then you have to go in and there's tools where you can go in and resize the hard drive, and it's a pain to do that on a virtual drive. So just go ahead and give that the amount of hard drive space that you need up front. Make sure that you don't skimp on that, but keep in mind too that you're using hard drive space off your main hard drive. So you might, and this is a possibility that you could do this, you could put your VDI file onto a USB drive. See, I could actually put my VDI out here, and as long as my that USB drive's in, I could put it in there. And let's just say, I've got 128 gig right there. I could put I've got other folders on there, but let's just say I want to put 50 gig out there. I could do that. I could put that on a USB drive if you're running out of hard drive space on your main drive. But keep in mind that you're passing through to a USB drive, so it's going to slow everything down. On the store on a physical hard drive, dynamic or fixed, fixed goes ahead and creates that size all at once. A dynamic allocated only create what's needed at the time. So if it only needs 60 gig to create it to begin with, it's only going to create a 60 gig actual hard drive VDI size, and then that VDI will grow to 138 gig or 140. Let's see, I could type this in. I think I can type it in. Let's see. 140. There we go. 140. And then I'm going to create, and then that's going to create the VDI file. I could go out here on my folder here, and I could say, look at my VDI for there, and see there's my VDI file, but it's only 2,000 kilobytes. So once I create my server, it grew to, oh wait, let me show you my VDI for the server 2012. See, it grows to 8.5 gig once I put the server on there. And see, my Windows 7 is 64 gig because I've got SQL Server running. I've got a whole bunch of stuff on there running, and I think I've got 120 gig. Actually, let's look at my Windows 7 here at the settings. And my VDI file is, see, I've got virtual size of 100, but it's actually only using 60 gig. So I've got 40 more gig on that drive. If I booted that virtual machine up and looked, I would have 40 gig of drive space on there. So we've got our backup, and then now what we're going to do is we're going to come in here to our settings, and we're going to check over the settings here. I'm not going to demonstrate all of these. You can check out the VirtualBox website to know what all these do, but I'm going to cover some basic ones to get you started. The Advanced tab, I leave everything default here. Your snapshot folder, you can put your snapshots. That's when you back up make a snapshot of there. If you do your shared clipboard, I go ahead and do this now on my shared clipboard. I do host to guest, but I don't allow bidirectional or guest to host because I don't want anything jumping outside the VirtualBox. But when I go to put in my my key to do my my authentication key or my product key on there, I go ahead and put host to guest so I can copy and paste that in there. And on the drag and drop, I never allow guest to host or bidirectional because I don't want something, again, jumping out. I don't want drag and dropping files, but you could do host to guest so you can drag and drop a file into there. Description, you can put a description in here. I'm not going to lecture on, or I'm not going to talk about encryption, but you can turn encryption on. The system here, you can change the memory size before you start or after you start. But I go ahead and just leave it where it was. I'm going to turn my floppy off because I don't need floppies, and I'm going to move that down because this is the boot order for my BIOS. I'm going to leave all the rest of these default. On my processor, it only default gives it 1 CPU, but I can allocate it up to 4 CPUs because I've got 8 running on my operating system. So I can go ahead and let it run 4 CPUs so it'll run a little bit faster for me. And then acceleration, I'm just going to leave acceleration default. On my display, I can change my video memory. It's already up to 128, so I'm going to leave it there. You can do dual monitors inside of your machine, but I always do one monitor. Your scaling factor, I leave that default. If you need it 3D acceleration, you can turn that on. You can do remote display, but I'm not going to talk about it here. That's more advanced feature. And video capture. You can video capture inside your VirtualBox if you're wanting to do some type of demonstration or record something. You can do that with the software. But I'm going to leave mine off. My storage, this is pointing to my VDI, but now I'm going to need to point it to a ISO file. So my CD-ROM tray is empty. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to tell it to my drop-down box, and I'm going to tell it I want to select a virtual drive, and I'm going to point it to my ISO files, depending on which one I need, whether it's Windows 10 or Windows XP, or I've got Windows X. Oh no, I don't have my Pro in there. I've got it down there. But there's my Windows Server 2012. I'm going to select that. Audio, I'm leaving default. I'm going to leave it on. You don't need to turn audio on, but if you wanted audio on your machine, but with the server, I don't really need it on, but you can. Make sure you turn on network. This is the great thing about VirtualBox. If you're wanting to test something and you don't want it jumping to the outside world, you can turn off your network at first. If you don't need to get to the internet first, like say that you want to install an operating system, you don't want it seeing the internet, leave it unplugged. Just turn this enable network adapter off at first, and you can turn that back on later. It's just like unplugging your cable to the back of a box. So that way I can install my operating system. I can then put some software on there, maybe my security software, and then I can come in here and plug the cable in. Serial ports, you can do serial ports, but I'm not going to turn those on. USB for my mouse. Shared folders. Shared folders is where I can see folders from the my real machine into my VirtualBox machine. I don't set any up by default, and I'm not going to show in this video how to do that, but there is the ability to show how to create folders and share those folders back and forth. And then user interface, you can change what you see on the VirtualBox side on your user interface. And I'm not going to demonstrate that here. I'm just going to show you that there is an option for that. So I'm pointing to my ISO. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click Start. If you're not pointing to your ISO file properly, it's just going to boot up and it's going to say no medium found. It didn't find a hard drive. It didn't find anything that could boot. But since I'm pointing to my ISO file, it's going to boot up and try to start installing Windows Server 2012. And I'm not going to let here and set it run. I'm going to pause it on my side. Okay, so it comes up to the login screen. You would go through and do whatever you need to do your login screen, click next, go through, install now, repair your computer, do whatever you're going to do. And if I do my install now, I'm going to have to put my product key in, and it'll pop up and it'll say it wants my product key, but I'm not going to go through all that. I don't need to demonstrate that. So you're going to need your product key, and if you're going to have to either paste that in if you turned on your input for there to be able to drag and drop or shared clipboard, host a guest. You can cut and paste that from a product key somewhere, or you have to type it in. And then once you get to that, this video is not about installing operating systems. It's about VirtualBox. So you would just install your operating system, no matter which one it was, whether it was Windows XP, Server, Windows 7. And the one thing I'm going to show you here, let me quit here. Let me quit this, and I'm just going to power off this machine because I'm going to delete it, because this is just for the video. And I'm going to tell it to remove. When you go to remove something, you can clone a machine, and cloning does take a little bit of time because depending on the size of your VDI file, it may take a little bit of time. My Windows 7 machine takes me about 20 minutes to copy it, and that's on an SSD drive on a Windows machine with 32 gig of RAM. So it does take a little bit of time, even in that case, to copy. As you can see, almost 70 gig of data. If I can set these in groups, I can make a Windows group and group those up. I'm not going to do that. Or I can remove it. And on the remove options, you can tell it to delete all files, which is going to remove everything in that folder. And that's why I move the VDI file sometimes, because I might want to use it again. But if I delete all files, it's going to remove everything. If I do just remove only, it's going to remove the machine, but it's going to leave the files in there like the VDI. But I'm going to delete all files. And I'm going to power up my Windows Server machine here. I'm going to show you something with the insert here. So we're going to start this up. And it's going to boot up to Windows Server. It's should come up to my login screen here in a few seconds. And On a Windows Server machine, you have to input Alt-Control-Delete. Well, if I just press Alt-Control-Delete on my computer, it's going to bring up my, on a Windows 10 machine, it's going to bring up my operating system, and I need to resize this for the recording here. So I can't just push Alt-Control-Delete on my regular machine because it'll pull up the option on my regular operating system, and I can't do it here. So I go up here to Input, I go to Keyboard, and I tell it to insert Alt-Control-Delete. You can also, the shortcut is Host-Delete. So if I press my Delete key up here, it should, oh no, I have to do my Host key, but I always just come up here and do it here. Insert Alt-Control-Delete, and there you go. And that's how you can do that. Now I'm going to go ahead and power this machine down because I don't need it. And I should have shut it down, but I don't need it right now. It's more for demonstration. And you can also save. So that's how to create and boot one up. You can also, if you can save, if you're working in a machine, you can see the preview image here. I was working in a machine, and I'm going to go ahead and start this one up. It'll take a few seconds here to boot this up, and I've got it. As it's booting up, it's outside the recording area, so you can't see the whole thing, but you can see part of the desktop that was created there. And it just, depending upon your machine speed, it will restore that virtual machine. It essentially takes a snapshot, or it says, okay, here's where I am currently on this operating system, and it's kind of like what Hibernate on a what you do with Hibernate on a regular Windows machine, but in here, and you can see it always messes up my icons when I go to change the size of them. But that's okay. I'm not worried about that at this point. And see, I can change the size of this, and it changes all around. And so on this machine, if I can shut it down, or if I'm working on something, let's say that I've got a notepad opened up here, and I'm working on something, and I don't want to lose this information, and I don't really need to save this, which I would always save your work no matter what. But let's just say I'm doing a demonstration on SQL Server, and I've got SQL Server opened up, and I'm working in SQL Server, and I'm showing something, and I'm writing scripts. I save my scripts, but I don't want to close everything down and open it all back up again. Well, I can just come in here and I can say exit. I can save the machine state. I can power it off, which is that's like pulling the power plug on your machine. You can send this shutdown signal, but that doesn't always work with a Windows machine. Or I can tell it to save the machine state. And what that's going to do, I can shut the machine down normally by doing the start shutdown, but this is going to then save a virtual copy, or where we were. It's going to save the state of it where we were at, and just stop everything, and it'll boot it right back up again. It's kind of like hibernating, I guess, is the best way to call it. And so now it's in hibernation. It's in a save state. The thing about being in a save state, though, I can't change a lot of the settings. I can't change the memory. I can't change the display. I can't change the store. Well, I can change the storage. So if you need to drop an ISO file, and you can do that. And that's how that works on there. Now, if I want to have some extra settings on there, once you get your machine started up, and that machine is up and running, you can insert the guest editions CD, and the guest editions is software that runs. I'm not going to lecture about it here or not talk about it here in this video. You want to read about the guest editions, but it allows you to do some different things with your machine. It allows you to resize your screen and your display, and do some different things that are kind of nice on there. So all you do on that is just go up here to Input or Device, insert Guest Edition CD image, and that'll pop up, and it'll ask you if you want to run that software. And it'll run on, I've not tried this, I've tried it on Ubuntu and Linux Mint, Windows XP, Windows 7, Windows 10. It runs on all those. Server, it runs on that. I've not tried it on a Mac OS, but that runs the Guest Editions, and that gives you different options. Different software that comes with VirtualBox, and it installs that inside your machine here. So I'm just going to go ahead and shut this down normally and show you how you would normally shut that down. And it would shut my Windows 7 machine down, and it's just going to collapse that back down, and now I can change my settings once it gets shut down. So I can go in here and change settings now where I couldn't before. Okay, and that's the end of this video. We did an overview of I didn't walk through these steps of installing VirtualBox because that should be okay for you. You can get that information off of the website. It's just a standard install, and depending on which operating system you're going to use, it's a little bit different. And then we also covered creating a new machine and then some of the settings on those. And if you have any questions, just leave a comment on the video. Make sure that you subscribe to my channel if you want more videos, see when more videos come out. And just, like I said, leave a comment if you have got any questions.